Joining us now live from Melbourne is Anthony Albanese, the member for Grayndler and the People's Choice as Labor leader, of course. Thanks for joining us, Albo.
Good to be with you, Chris.
Now, you've got a big fight on your hands holding your inner city Sydney seat of Grayndler, of course, with a strong challenge from the Greens. Is that hampering your campaigning? Here you are in Melbourne. You want to campaign around the country. Surely you need to spend most of your time in Grayndler.
No, well, I'm concerned about a Labor government, not just about my electorate. And I've been out there fighting the Liberals each and every day. I woke up in Perth this morning. It's my second visit to Western Australia during the campaign. I've been to Queensland 3 times. I've been to South Australia, Tasmania, and I've been to Victoria twice. So I'm out there campaigning each and every day against the Liberals, while the Greens campaigning against me. I mean, someone's got to fight the Liberals, and it certainly isn't the Greens political party, who seem determined to concentrate on attacking Labor. And Adam Bandt was there again today on Sky News attacking me. He's got a bit of an unhealthy obsession, I think, Chris. He can't seem to do an interview without mentioning me and without talking about his candidate in Grayndler, although he doesn't talk about his views that often.
We'll come to you. We'll come to the candidate in a moment.
Keep them a bit quiet.
I am pleased that you're calling your opponents the Liberals. Often you've talked about fighting the Tories. They're different beasts, surely.
Oh, no. Well, Tories are people who believe in class politics, and this current bunch of Liberals certainly do. They're certainly not smaller Liberals. There's no question about that.
I reckon there's a lot of class warfare coming from your side of this campaign.
Well, when a smaller Liberal takes over the Liberal Party, he becomes a voice of... I mean, I see Malcolm Turnbull, but I hear Tony Abbott, and I think that's why people are so disappointed in Malcolm Turnbull.
That's not a good strategy. You're just reassuring his Conservative flank now.
Oh, well, at the end of the day, they're going to go somewhere, and I suspect I know where they'll land.
Now, you make that strong point about how the Greens attack Labor. The Greens took a seat off Labor, of course, in Melbourne. They've got their eyes set on another Labor seat in Batman, in those inner northern suburbs of Melbourne, and, of course, your seat in the inner west of Sydney. Also, Tanya Plibersek, they'll have a go pretty hard there in Sydney. Do you think that that's a mistake? The Greens could actually win a seat off the Liberal Party? They couldn't, could they? I mean, if they want to get seats in the lower house, they have to attack Labor.
Well, of course they could. They took Paran here in Melbourne off the Liberal Party at the last Victorian state election, but they choose not to. Richard Di Natale is in danger of being in breach of the electoral laws because he spends more time in the electorate of Grayndler than he does in his own seat, although I'm told that he's moved his office from Geelong, where I was today, into Melbourne. But he seems to be up there at least once a week. Adam Bandt's been up there non-stop. And it's extraordinary because they're campaigning for a bloke who the video went up about from the Greens Party. It wasn't something found by us. It was put up there by the Greens proudly, with Jim Casey saying that he'd prefer a Tony Abbott government rather than a Bill Shorten-led government, well, essentially because you get better demos.
Sorry to interrupt you, Anthony Albanese, but I've got that grab, some of that grab ready to roll, so we should share that with the viewers before you make your comments on it. This is your Greens opponent, the man the Greens are putting up to run in the seat of Grayndler. His name is Jim Casey, and here's what he said in that video.
I would prefer to see Tony Abbott returned as Prime Minister, with a Labor movement that was growing, with an anti-war movement that was disrupting things in the streets, with a strong and vibrant women's movement, Indigenous movement, and a climate change movement that was actually starting to disrupt the production of coal.
And that's what you're referring to there, Anthony Albanese, that he actually wants people protesting in the streets rather than a stable Labor or left-of-centre government.
Well, it's an extraordinary proposition saying that he wants people to be worse off so you get better demonstrations. I want to lift people up. And what's extraordinary as well about that particular clip is he's not sitting there by himself. He's sitting there next to Adam Bandt and Lee Rhiannon, who both applaud those remarks, both applaud the idea that it is better to have an Abbott government essentially doing people over because of the demonstrations and the response to it, than it is to try and get practical outcomes. I'm in Parliament to make a positive difference to people's lives, not so that bad things happen, so you get good demos. It's an extraordinary proposition for someone who's presenting themselves in certainly the seat that's been identified by the Greens as their main objective at this election.
Well, given that you've got such an extreme candidate running against you and that the coalition are no chance to win that seat, it's probably not surprising that you're getting some support from some unusual quarters in this election campaign. And, of course, famously, the Daily Telegraph newspaper, the News Corporation tabloid that markets to Western Sydney unashamedly and has been no friend of the Federal Labor Party over recent years, actually went with a front page. Here's a picture of you on screen holding that front page, "Save Our Albo." Now, are the Daily Telegraph doing you a favour by coming in to bat for you, or do you reckon that's just got the Green left in your electorate even more suspicious?
Well, I didn't ask them to do it, but I welcome support from any quarters. And the fact is that they know, as do people who are sensible and about positive reform, you can't have the position that the Greens have in my electorate, for example, which is to close Kingsford Smith Airport, but to oppose Badgerys Creek Airport as well. So you'd have Sydney as a global city. The actual position is to not have an airport in Sydney. It's an extraordinary proposition, and it's a matter of record that when it comes to practical policies that need to be advanced, the Greens political party, they're out there pretending during this election campaign that they make funding announcements each and every day as if they're an alternative government. I mean, Adam Bandt and this crew are delusional. They're delusional about their position when they say, hey, the Greens will spend $300 million or X dollars on renewable energy. They're 75 votes short of a majority in the House of Representatives, of legislating anything at all. All the Greens can do is to protest after decisions are made. I'm in politics, and the reason why I'm campaigning, not just in my seat, but around the country, to make decisions. And you make decisions in our Westminster system around the cabinet table. I'm there to make a difference, and I've done so previously in the Labor government, and I also do so by attempting to hold the government to account and put up practical suggestions. Badgerys Creek Airport, for example, could not have occurred without the government and the opposition agreeing. It had been stymied for decades, as you know, Chris. This is a real breakthrough. I give Tony Abbott's government credit for it, but I think we deserve equal credit for the fact that we've been responsible and determined to get this done in the interests of jobs and economic activity in Western Sydney.
Yeah, and you contrast that with the delusion and extreme policies of the Greens. Yet, of course, if Labor does well in this election and Adam Bandt's returned in Melbourne and maybe the Greens win Batman as well at the expense of David Feeney, you would go into coalition with the Greens to form government as sure as day follows night.
No, we wouldn't, Chris, and we've made that very, very clear. And in the past, of course, the Greens, the first people they went into government with in coalition was in Tasmania, and it was the Liberal Party. So there's no question that of what our position is. Bill Shorten's made it very clear. I've made my position clear as well. We want a majority Labor government.
Sure,
and,
you want
that's
that.
why,
you want that. But are you prepared to shun the Greens and stay out of office? You were part of the Gillard government, which was based in large part on an alliance with the Greens.
I was also a part and Deputy Prime Minister in the Rudd government, and we had no coalition with the Greens or anyone else. And at that time, when we met with the minor parties, we made it clear that Kevin had been elected leader of the Labor Party, I'd been elected deputy, we'd be going onto the parliamentary floor, and they could do whatever they want, but we weren't going to do a deal, and we didn't.
You'd rather be in opposition than form any formal agreement, strike any formal agreement with the Greens?
We will not be entering into a coalition. We will govern as the Labor Party in our own right, and I'm very hopeful as well that we will. We're aiming to win not just 76 seats. We're aiming to win more than that. I've been in WA yesterday campaigning in Cowan and Stirling, 2 non-held seats. Today I've been with Libby Coker, our candidate in Corangamite, as well as Richard Marles in Geelong, campaigning there. We're out campaigning right around the country because we believe that this country needs a Labor government. This is a government that's run out of steam in its first term. It's quite extraordinary that Malcolm Turnbull's like the dog that caught the car. He doesn't know what to do with it. He's the Prime Minister, but there's no vision, there's no plan, which is why we're having the longest election campaign in recent political history.
We're only just getting warmed up in this election campaign, Anthony Albanese. When you say
we're just getting there.
You fight hard against the Liberals, the Tories, as you call them, and the Greens. Which organisation, which political party, in your view, is a bigger threat to the country, would do more damage to the country? The Greens, who want to shut down our second largest export industry, or the Liberal Party, who want to try and generate economic growth through tax cuts?
Well, I'm concerned, Chris, that you're buying some of the rhetoric because the Greens aren't in a position to be a threat to anything. They have one member of the House of Representatives. And I do find it extraordinary.
As I mentioned, that they could basically choose, they could install the next government if there's a hung parliament, and certainly in the Senate they will wield enormous power.
They have one member of the House of Representatives where government is formed, the same number as the Katter Australia Party, or at this point in time, the PUP, Clive Palmer's party. And I expect that Bob Katter's probably favourite to be returned in Kennedy, and I expect that he will have one member, and the Greens will have one member after the next election. This is an election that's about Labor versus Liberal. It's about Bill Shorten versus Malcolm Turnbull. It's about our vision for education and health and infrastructure and jobs versus the Liberals' vision of giving tax cuts for large corporations.
But do you believe do you believe those Liberal policies are more sensible and more pragmatic and less adverse for the nation than the policies proposed by the Greens?
Well, they have to come up with fully costed policies, as do we. That's the difference. There are 2 mainstream political organisations in Australia, and people should, in terms of the House of Representatives, where government is formed, that's the choice that's before people. And that means that you have to actually not just promise whatever people want to hear. You have to make choices. See, the Greens don't have to make choices. They can say, for example, 100% renewable energy. Now, well, how do you turn the lights on? You need to transition to a carbon-constrained economy. You can't do it overnight. You need to make sure that you look after the workforce, that you are practical and look after the economy. And both the major parties certainly have to do that. We have a serious policy on climate change. I don't think the Liberal Party do. The Greens have quite often good sentiments, but no practical way of achieving it. And that's just one example. We have a 50% renewable energy target by 2030. We will be able to get there. We can't get there to 100% renewable energy immediately. That's the truth.
I think your policy is wildly ambitious, but you're right, the Greens are way out there on another limb. Let me just finish up on the Labor Party before I let you go, and I'm going to refresh your mind and that of the viewers of a very difficult time for you and Labor when Kevin Rudd was coming back to challenge Julia Gillard. You had always been a loyal supporter of Kevin Rudd's, although you were a loyal servant to Julia Gillard when she was Prime Minister. Have a look at Anthony Albanese. I think it's 2012 we're talking about here.
I have devoted my life to advancing the cause of Labor. I have despaired in recent days as I have watched Labor's legacy in government be devalued.
Yeah, Anthony Albanese, that was obviously a difficult time. But my point here is, I mean, I've been openly, I've admired what you did then because no one could question your loyalty in these difficult circumstances. But how does it sit with you now with Bill Shorten as leader of your party? You ran against him and he defeated you because he had greater factional support in the parliament. You had a majority of the support among the Labor membership. But you showed integrity and loyalty throughout that process. Bill Shorten is the man being put up as Prime Minister. He backstabbed two Prime Ministers. He was disloyal to Kevin Rudd and then disloyal to Julia Gillard. Does that sit uneasily with you?
What sits well is the fact that we've moved on and we learnt the lessons as a political party. Of course, it's the Liberal Party that have got rid of a leader, an elected Prime Minister in his first term in Tony Abbott. What I said there, I think, was I stand by my comments. Labor in government, I believe, was a good government. I think we did devalue our currency by what occurred in 2010. I remain a good friend of both Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard. I admire them both. But what occurred was not in the interests of the Labor Party because it was very difficult then to go out and talk about the response we had to the global financial crisis, saving 200,000 jobs, if we deposed an elected Prime Minister. I think the Liberal Party are having the same difficulty in this campaign. If they've governed so well, why did Malcolm Turnbull knock off Tony Abbott? And that's why you have Malcolm Turnbull struggling to have a narrative, struggling to have show that leadership position and that strength because he's unable to do that, to break with Tony Abbott's legacy.
To embrace that legacy.
And I think it's causing a great deal of issues. They didn't learn the lessons. The good news is for Labor faithful that we did. And we, this term, have been very united. I've supported Bill Shorten strongly during this term. I've done my best each and every day to take up the ball for the cause of Labor, as I did in government under both Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard. And I think if you concentrate on your internals, as we were guilty of doing, the electorate will punish you and they'll mark you down. What you need to be doing every single day is never lose sight of the fact that we have a great privilege in serving in the federal parliament. Not many people get to do it. There's a lot of people competing to do it right now. Make every day count. Make every day count to make a difference to their lives, to improve their lives. I mean, that's why I'm so frustrated by the actions of the Greens in my electorate, because they're not concerned about improving people's lives.
I'm going to have to cut you off.
They've got a candidate who says they want their lives to be worse.
He wants Tony Abbott back. He's in sync with the so-called Delcons. That's what I like about your Greens candidate.
He is indeed.
Thanks very much for joining us tonight, Anthony Albanese. Good luck in Grainler. You better get back there and knock on some doors. All right, thanks.